without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker for this afternoon, University of Nebraska President Hank Bounds. If you would, please make him feel welcome.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to you about what's going on at the University of Nebraska. As you probably know, I'm a transplant here. I've only been in town since first couple of weeks in April. I come from Mississippi, where I ran a university system there that was about twice as large as the University of Nebraska. It had 8 campuses and an academic health science center, a budget of about $4 billion. There are significant differences between that system and this system. I spent a lot of time thinking about whether or not this would be the kind of place where I would want to raise my family and the kind of job that I would want to go into. And so, interest of full disclosure, I'll tell you that when I was first contacted about the job, I said that told them I wasn't interested for 2 reasons, and I'll tell the story all the time. Number one, I said, I think it's pretty cold up there. And number 2, I didn't know much about the University of Nebraska. So I think that, to your comments on signage, one of the things that I've really learned about the University of Nebraska, while we do very good work, we don't do a very good job of telling the story. There are some incredible things happening. And as you know, in running your own businesses, part of the important work you have to do to be successful is to be able to tell your story. So we're going to spend a lot of time thinking about how we communicate to business leaders, to Nebraskans in general, but also to individuals across this country and around the world. The University of Nebraska is the kind of place that should be making a real difference nationally and internationally in a number of places. And so I'll talk about a couple of those areas, and then I'll leave a bit of time at the end to at least attempt to respond to any of your questions. So while we are very good in a number of places, one of the things that I don't think we've done as good a job as we should have is to outline the 2 or 3 or 4 areas where we think we're going to be best in the world. I think that the University of Nebraska has that kind of capability. One of those areas is in water, all things water, particularly water-related research. And the reason I talk about water is, you only have to look to California or other places and think about what's happening with global population. We live on planet Earth where there are 7.2 billion people. 1 billion of those people are malnourished. Over the next 30 years, our population is going to grow to 9.6 billion people. And so that means we'll have to produce about 60 to 70% more food with less water. We are leaving our children and our grandchildren real significant issues. They will not grow up in the same kind of world that we grew up in if we don't start to really aggressively address this issue right now. So when people ask me, why do you go, what did you decide to move your family 1,000 miles away from your family and friends? I said, because this was the opportunity to really make a difference in the world. We can be that kind of place because we have. You think about our campuses. We have a campus here in Lincoln that also has a presence in every county, a large R1 land-grant institution. We also have an urban campus. We have an outstate campus. We have an academic health science center. But then importantly, we also have a number of institutes that have been stood up. So for example, Water for Food, Rural Futures, Buffett Early Childhood. We have the university has stood up institutes that really have the potential to make a profound difference in the world. Water for Food is one of them. Made possible because of a very generous gift. We now have relationships with about a dozen other countries around the world. When you think about dealing with world population growth from 7.2 billion to 9.6 billion people, it becomes really apparent that the U.S. alone can't solve this issue, that it will take every country in the world pulling on the rope in the same direction. So I'm really excited about where we're headed. We have lots of work to do, but there's real potential. We have the potential in early childhood education to make a significant difference. If you look at only the city of Lincoln, and look at the stats of birth to age 5 children, what you find is that 1 in 5 of those children are living in poverty. Now, the important reason to point that out is because children growing up in poverty, not in every case, I'm using broad brush here, but on the average, a child growing up in poverty has heard 20 million fewer words by age 5 than an affluent child. The child who is, over 80% of brain development occurs in the first 5 years of life. If you look at the city of Omaha and look at where murders have taken place, you look at the last 10 years, what you'll find is while there are some dots across the city, there's a circle where all of those murders have taken place. And one of the issues that you find there is there's significant poverty. The interesting thing about that is if you were to look back a decade before that, the circle is about a third of that size. And so if you think of poverty as a cancer, that brings lots of ills to include young people not being prepared to enter kindergarten because the cognitive development hasn't taken place. What you find is that a child entering kindergarten that grows up not in a print-rich or vocabulary-rich environment. What happens there is that they enter kindergarten with a vocabulary level of a 2 or 3-year-old. And the research tells us that then we have to really, with very little brain development, cognitive development that's taking place in the first 5 years of life, we've got the next 3.5 years to get them to a point where they're reading proficiently by the end of the 3rd grade. The research is clear that students who can't read proficiently by the end of the 3rd grade are exponentially more likely to go to prison and exponentially more likely to be high school dropouts. So that means they're going to be consumers to society as opposed to contributors. I often speak to business groups like this, business leaders like this, because it's important that we figure out how to solve this issue. It's important, and so the question always is, well, why should we care other than the obvious reason of not caring for our fellow man? And I say to business leaders, you must see these birth of age 5 children as one of two ways. They're going to either be future employees, in which case you want them to have the skill set so they can be successful, or they're going to be future consumers of their product. And I don't know about you, but if I'm running a business, I want my consumers to have a bunch of purchasing power. We know that students who don't finish high school or only finish high school don't have the same kind of purchasing power as students who go on to get advanced degrees. So the last thing I'll tell you about where we are as a state and nation is that what we know is that over the next decade, there will be tens of millions of jobs created. What we don't know is what those jobs are because they haven't been created. What we do know is that all of them will require some education beyond high school. So if you think about just the city of Lincoln, 1 in 5, if we don't address that issue, then those students aren't going to be ready for kindergarten, and they're not going to be ready for middle school, means they're not going to be ready for high school, and that means they won't be ready to attend the University of Nebraska. That's an important issue for all of us to focus on. I know I'm kind of being Mr. Sunshine right now, and I kind of feel like I'm bringing in the jury with me. The good news is that we do only have 1 in 5. So we have a population that we can address if we all focus on them together. The good news is that we have a fantastic university here in this community that is really focused on what matters. The good thing is we're doing research that absolutely will make a difference. So if you look at things like food production, all of the research that's happening right now, and it's happened over the past 2 decades at the University of Nebraska, we're already producing significantly more food than we did, just say, a decade ago. In fact, we have, out in here on the LIBA, a living timeline for those of you that have farmed before. You know going to need to be able to produce a bushel of corn about that much property. So when you think about what that means in terms of the kinds of research that needs to be completed, and you understand what the federal government's not doing in terms of investing in research. So for example, if we took every penny that the USDA spends on water-related research, it would be nearly enough. We're way behind. I spend a lot of my time in D.C., other places, working with private philanthropists, trying to convince them that this is an issue that we have to invest in a more robust way if we're going to meet the needs of our children, our grandchildren. So I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you and a lot of staff. I'm pretty excited to be here. As you may be able to tell, we have a great university. The really good news here is the potential exists for us to be absolutely one of America's great universities. And that's why I'm here. I want to give a talk. So let me stop and at least attempt to answer your questions you may have about our university.
Got a microphone. I'll be happy to hand it out. Any questions for President Bounds? Mark, you're up first.
In regards to the water that you talked about, yesterday morning on Sunday morning program, they talked about the need for water right here in the United States, specifically in New Mexico. So do you see the university teaming up with, say, the University of New Mexico? There was a woman there that had never had running water in her house, and they were saying that to have that running water, they have to dig a well, which costs $500,000, but you still won't have running water at the time, and have gravity wells. So how do you see my alma mater teaming up or getting people right in the United States?
So the good news is we're already doing all of that work. We probably haven't been as focused within the U.S. as we need to be. We've had more international focus. I sit on the board for the Water for Food Institute, and we made it very clear to the leadership there that we absolutely have to figure out how to hold hands with the other research institutions across the country. There are lots of good work is being done. The national funders, NSF, NIH, Department of Ag, all require more and more team science. And if you think about it, it's good for us to have our best scientists working on an issue, but it's much more important that our best scientists, Oklahoma's best scientists, New Mexico's best scientists, California's best scientists are all working on these issues together. So I just left a group of researchers this morning to start clearing some roadblocks that existed for collaboration within the university, but also with campuses across the country. So that work is happening. Part of where we are is Nebraskans don't know that because we haven't told our story. But we're about to start to tell that story. When you think about California is a good story as well. Anyone who's has much background in ag sort of have to ask yourself, how in the world does California continue to do ag with the water issues that they're having? And if you think about San Joaquin Valley going off on and what that means to food availability just in the U.S., it's pretty scary. It's in all of our best interest to work together. We're working on it. That's our.
Good morning. Nice tie. I like that. I have two questions. Give me two companies that you'd like to see come to Nebraska. And then part two is, have you met with the governor? What do you guys talk about?
I meet with the governor every couple of weeks. We talk about a number of issues. Two specific companies. Long time ago, it's not a question.
One.
I would be really interested in any company that can bring high-tech or STEM jobs to Nebraska, because those are the jobs that are going to be the highest paying and give us the best opportunity to keep Nebraskans in Nebraska. And so, long line of those kinds Our biggest issue is that we have such low unemployment when you think about bringing in new companies. It's an enviable place to be, but when a company's thinking about moving to a location, they want to know what the quality of life is like, they want to know what schools look like, they want to know what particular high-end manufacturing, what utility costs are. We can put a check on all those boxes, and then they say, well, you've got 2% unemployment. How can you meet our employment needs if we move? So we've got to be really thoughtful about how we attract students from other states to the University of Nebraska to grow our employment.
Two questions, both in the future. Where do you see universities around the country going in the next 5 to 20 years in terms of sticks and bricks requirement? And then do you have a position?
What requirement?
Sticks and bricks, just their footprint. And then do you have a position on the future of Pershing?
Future of, I'm sorry,
The future of Pershing Center in downtown Miami.
okay. So I'm new, so I don't know that I could give you an educated opinion on Pershing. I'm about 110 days in, give me another 100 days. Where are universities and colleges going? There are ballpark 4,300 colleges and universities around the country. I think that 1,500 or so of them will go out of business in the next decade. I think that will be largely caused by a lack of investment at the state level. A lot of people talk about tuition increases across the country. Tuition increases have corresponded directly with state commitment to fund hiring. And so we have policymakers talking about tuition prices going up, but all the while state appropriations going this direction. The second thing that I think that the reason we have an issue is this notion of disruptive technology. We all are, I'll speak for myself, I grew up in the, I'm a digital immigrant. My 14-year-old son, Will, is a digital native. I used to tell the story he grew up with a mouse in his hand, but then I was corrected and said, no, he grew up with a touchpad in his hand. I would rather do anything to get out of taking a course online. Kids today we have 20% of our courses probably here at Lincoln are kids taking online courses and living in dorms. So it's not like they need to take an online course. Now part of it may be that fits their schedule better, but it's just, we're just completely different generations. And you got to believe that that's just going to accelerate over time, particularly as we get to see things like Excel and the medical center. We'll have physicians in a year from now that will be able to do the digital, look at your part and put on the goggles and walk into a simulator and walk around inside your part to see all the issues before they ever do surgery. We'll be able to, our physicians will be able to do 1,000 virtual spinal taps before they ever do it for the first time on a patient. We'll be able to, I think in a decade from now, put a real-life 3D virtual teacher, the best calculus teacher in America in the most rural environments. At the same time, when we build buildings, we're doing it for 30-year money. So when you think about long-term payback, how we service that debt, and then instructional delivery could look very different a decade from now. That keeps me awake at night. So I spend a lot of time really making certain projects make sense.
I talked about a lot of the policy issues of LIBA a minute ago. One of our policy issues was to support Nebraska Innovation Campus. We were big vocal supporters of creating the campus, even moving the state fair out so that it could be created. Can you give us a 1-minute version of our vision of what you see moving forward to add to the success there?
One of the surprises, honestly, was that you didn't have this kind of campus set up 15 years ago. So we're way behind. Most all the major research campuses in America have this kind of a setup where you put private sector researchers in the same space. So you take the academics, the research capability with entrepreneurs and innovators, take the product that's developed and then spin it back to the market. I think we're going to see it grow. I know that there will be, there are those who say, well, why is it taking off now? If you look at the research triangle in North Carolina, it's well known for the kind of work they do there, but it took them 20 years to get their first business. So it's a slow process. We need another couple of large independents. I do think that it could be the kind of space that could really ramp up and create lots of good job opportunities. But we also need a space in this state that's a true accelerator space where we can't afford to give cheap to no rent, cheap to no calls for IT backup, cheap calls to leadership training, require that these new startup companies put their money in product and sales. We need that kind of accelerator here connected with the university. We don't have it. So we're in a good place, but we're a little bit behind.
I have a question relative to curriculum and educational programs. Based on the agricultural focus and current demand for different degrees, not only local, regional, or nationally, are there any plans to streamline certain areas of study or expand into certain areas of study that are already in your objectives as the next thing that is going to be making UNL a destination to get a degree, a competitive degree of its kind?
So I would tell you that we are removing and creating degree programs all the time. And that's really, in very many ways, market-driven exercise. Universities aren't very nimble, so we're probably not doing that as quick as we should. Early on, I am more focused on the business practices. So for example, there are 5 IT shops for the University of Nebraska. One at my office, one at UNL, one at UNO, one at UNK, one at UNC. Well, that's probably not the best use of dollars. I'm collapsing all those into 2, one at UNC, for HIPAA compliance issues and that type of thing, and then one for everyone else. And that's just about being more efficient, effective. We get 20,000, 30,000 attacks on our network every week. And so, making certain that we have the right kind of cybersecurity is important. We spend a lot of time trying to grow programs with the Department of Defense, with STRATCOM. In fact, we do a good bit of research around combating weapons of mass destruction. Cybersecurity, we're also building a program for cybersecurity. And so we're being very careful to match up with the kind of departments that we have. The ag space will be forever changing in terms of academic programs. New equipment, new techniques are changing all the time, and so that will require us to change. Technology is really going to drive program changes and modifications over time. And there was a question up here.
My big question would be, we've got very distinct campuses. Are you looking to programs together? I'm thinking specifically, UNL is Big Ten, so they can take advantage of all the research activities that go on in all Big Ten universities, but UNL and UNK kind of foster children sitting out there and not. Like, have you got a plan for putting them together as a work over
That's a good question. So what I say to people all the time is this is one university, 4 campuses, 1 Nebraska. UNL is about 23,000 students. they can't compete. In 23, there are lots and lots and lots of regional campuses across the country that are significantly larger than 23,000. So in order for UNL to compete with the Michigans, Ohio States, Georgias, Floridas, Oklahoma, UNL absolutely has to hold hands with that center and with UNO in particular. That holds true also for academic programs, and we just haven't done a really good job. We've all sort of been out on our own island. I've said to people a number of times, if UNL thinks that UNO is their competition, then we have a whole other problem. That's not the competition. Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, Michigan State, that's the competition. That there are growth to age 20 population in this state is not growing, we're not making any more Nebraskans. And so if UNL grows, it's at the expense of another campus, and the same holds true for UNO, for any of the campuses. We have to grow our population by our enrollment by looking at non-traditional students at 25 to 35 age group in this day needs additional educational opportunities. We need to grow in the technology, online delivery space, and we need to be smart about how we grow with non-residents. And the Big Ten footprint is not the answer. It's part of an answer. Illinois has some capacity issues, but if we really want to grow, we need to be thoughtful about the state of Texas, about cities that have capacity issues. I'm working on that now. We cannot act like 4 separate, distinct institutions and be competitive in the most competitive higher ed marketplace of our time. So
I think we've got time for just one more.
Sure. Dr. Bounds, welcome to Nebraska lately. Good to have you here. You mentioned research in water, food, and also early childhood development. Are there any other areas of global excellence that you see university striving to achieve?
we have the most powerful laser in the world, most powerful laser lab in the world. We can detect radioactive material through several feet of steel. The laser's this big. So we have a real opportunity to do amazing work in combating weapons of mass destruction. This is a dangerous world, and it's getting more dangerous by the day. And so when I think about what we're doing, we're focusing on food, fuel, and water, moving the needle for our youngest, most vulnerable citizens, protecting our nation's interest in the weapons of mass destruction space. Let me close by just with a short video for you watch. It's maybe 2 minutes. And so for Husker fans in here, everybody's Husker fans? If you don't get excited about the University of Nebraska after watching this, so to your question, if you will go to our website and our Google NSRI, National Strategic Research Institute, you'll be able to watch a couple videos and hear from some of our lead researchers on what we're doing to combat weapons of mass destruction, and that will just absolutely make you proud of this university. Have a great day.